deHart here, host of The Coaching Studio. I am excited to introduce my guest today, Dr. D. Yvonne Young. Dr. D is a ICF Master Certified Coach. He is also a fellow and co-lead for Race, Equity, and Inclusion at the Institute of Coaching at McLean Harvard Medical School. For over a decade, Dr. D has been dedicating himself to helping people create positive and lasting changes in their life. His simple and direct, uncomplicated discussions spark new thinking and heal broken people. His in-depth emotional intelligence theories launched his career as a world-renowned public speaker and one of America's most sought-after life coaches. He has a TEDx talk, and I'll be making a link to that. At the end of the day, Dr. D is a straight talker and a transformation agent who supports others to tap into their gifts. He has two books, Break Up, Don't Break Down, and Another Chance, Where Would You Be Without One? And consistently, the reviews that I read about his books are that these books are no nonsense, straight talk, that really help people think about things in new ways. So Dr. D, thank you so much for being on the Coaching Studio today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I am so glad to have you. So, I start off with this question because I'm so fascinated by the journeys that each of the coaches who come on the show are, the journeys that they've taken. I'd love to hear what got you into coaching. How did you end up here?
Wow, that's we don't have that much time, but I give you the Cliff Note version. I was at University of Houston studying neurological psychology and looking at med schools to become a neurosurgeon. Well, life happened. Mother died, lots of embezzlement, a lot of things happened. And the next thing, I'd written one book that you didn't mention earlier, and it did fairly well. So I had this this department head say, well, have you ever thought about being a psychologist? I'm like, heck no, I don't want to be a psychologist. And he said, well, nah, do you understand how many different venues there are in psychology, and especially on the science and evidence-based end? And I was like, well, okay, that's interesting. So long story short, all of that accumulated, and finally, mother's deceased, buried. Now I've written a second book. Before I knew anything, I'm getting a phone call from the Associated Press about the other book. That's the Break Up, Don't Break Down book you just mentioned. And they had a show that you may or may not have heard of called The Bachelor. So the caller asked me about why Jake and Vienna broke up on The Bachelor, and I answered it. And just subsequent to that, I was in 18,000 newspapers globally the next day. Phone started ringing off the hook, and I got deemed the relationship expert, which on one side, it was great. I'm getting all this international attention, but it wasn't what I did. What I prided myself on was behavioral transformation and relatedness, which isn't always about romantic relationships. If anything, it's really indigenous to the relationship one has with one's purpose and oneself. So that set up the coaching thing. I like anything that most people do, anything phenomenal that you do, it comes to you more than you go to it.
Yeah. And I think that's a really interesting thing that you just brought up, which is this idea of relationship and then the relatedness and then the relationships that we have with ourselves, with those around us, with our situations. One of the things that I was really struck by is you write a lot and you are known for emotional intelligence. And for you, when you think about that idea of emotional intelligence and relatedness, is there an intersection there for you?
Yes. Matter of fact, it's funny you say that. I have a new book that's in development now called Accurate Empathy. Accurate empathy is the epitome of being emotionally intelligent. And that's gotten, over the last few years, massaged and commercialized to where it's more of a meme than something meaningful. I'm saying that it is critical as a coach for you to connect with people in a meaningful way. As a matter of fact, one of the ICF competencies is creating intimacy in a safe space for your client. Another one is coaching presence, right? These are things you get measured on to get credentialed. Without empathy, without intentional and accurate empathy, how can you, one, create intimacy with your client? How can you give them unconditional positive regard, which is the epitome of positive psychology and coaching? How could you build self-efficacy, which is the ability for your client to develop the confidence that they need in order to bring self-transformation? And with all of those things compounded, the one thing that's a denominator is empathy. The fact that great coaches, I'm not talking about average coaches, but great coaches, they connect with their clients in a way that the client can open up, not feel that there's anything that cannot be shared. They are allowed to be human and to make a mistake. The same way a baby learns to walk, you don't go and say, hey, you little stupid kid, you fell again. You don't do that. If anything, you just look at them, and after a while, you learn not to go and help them stand, because it's in their learning to get up on their own that gives them the strength. And the only way that you can do that in coaching is with accurate and intentional empathy.
Accurate intentional empathy is an interesting idea. And it makes me wonder, like I think about in my own life journey, the things that have developed empathy. What are the things that have really helped you to bring forward your own accurate and intentional empathy in the work that you do?
It starts with self. Most people that are in the behavioral space, they entered into that as a profession, if we be honest, because you probably came from dysfunction. I won't even say probably, you did come from dysfunction. Or you have so much dysfunction in your own life that now you're saying, you know what, if I can fix me, I can surely fix somebody else. The question is, how can you do that until you have done deep, broad, and wide introspection? How can you be a transformation agent for others who are following, literally probably a couple of steps behind you in footsteps? Great coaches tend to attract clients that they resonate with. If you look at my branding and you go Dr. D. Ivan, it's spelled like Ivan, D. Ivan, B-A-N, Young. And you look at my branding, one of the things that you see we have a trademark for is the reality check doctor. I had a hit show on TV1 called Fatal Attraction. It's still on. It's #1 show on that network for probably almost a decade. And people would look at that and they would say, wow, how could somebody do that? Well, for me to be good as a commentator and as a contributor to a program like that, or, another program I did is 2020 Presents, 2020 Investigates, on ABC. When we do these shows, you have to ask, what made that person do that? And you can't do that work without first putting yourself in that person's shoes. And then second, looking at when it was you. Because all of us have something where we look back and go, damn it, wow, I can't believe I did that. Well, you did it. You did it. And what made you do it? What is it that was going on with you? And as coaches, that curiosity and on the exploration with a client is what creates the generative moment.
Yeah.
And in that generative moment, that's when you formulate powerful questions simply out of awareness and being present.
Yeah. You know, and it's interesting too, because I think about people who are just starting off as coaches or who have been coaches for a while and maybe have their ACC and are moving towards their PCC. And then there's the people who are like, I'm happy at PCC. And then there's those who are like, I really want to get to MCC. As you went through this journey, because you went through that journey yourself, what was the biggest piece of that self-awareness and self-learning that was required of you as you moved into that masterful level of coaching?
Well, I've I've lectured about this all over the world. First, I'm going to be honest. There is such a gap between ACC level coaching, and because at that level, you're not really a coach. You're using probably coaching techniques as a consultant, and when I say in the practical of how people use it, because at the ACC level, you still have so much to learn about coaching. At the PCC level, you're moving past being mechanistic. One of the traps that causes people not to pass at the MCC level is they do template mechanistic coaching. Okay, what about you in, focus, motivation, outcome, and it's not, that is, I'm not knocking it because we all have to go through phases of evolution. But at the MCC level, that's when coaching is like a tango, it's a dance, it's fluid. You can't, there's no obvious, well, did you get the coaching agreement? Well, the coaching agreement is almost implied by assertive listening, by accurate use of reflections and reframing. By the time that you establish the coaching agreement and you're into now identifying motivators for the client, that again is seamless, and it's so fluid because it is appreciating the client, appreciating and being in awe of the little bitty bits of recognition in the breadcrumb trail of awareness that they're leaving for themselves. And you as a coach, you're going, hey, did you hear what you just said? What did that mean? That's fascinating. Okay, what does that bring forth for you? Okay. What would you have to change? If that's the vision, then what needs to change? All right, well, what do you have to work with? Right. And that gets so conversational rather than box checked. Where in PCC level coaching, many people are really trying to prove that they finished a coaching program. I went to this program, and did you notice I checked all the boxes? Well, yeah, but your coaching sucks. Sometimes the best coaching session is not coaching, it's listening. It's just being present. And I remember Well Coaches has one of the best programs in the world for coaches. And I was fortunate to take that. When I got ready to do my MCC, I had almost 300 hours in training. So I'm like really overly trained. But Well Coaches and their program, and this isn't a commercial for them, it's a great program, is birthed out of colleagues at Howard at Harvard, and Case Western and some other institutions. And I just, one of the things we were doing in a mock coaching session, I got partnered with somebody that, well, okay, somebody might listen to this, so I won't use too much of a reference, but let's just say it was someone who was very interesting to me, and I'll leave it at that. And I was like, oh, I get this interesting person, great. And when we did the session, I was doing like most PCC level coaches. I'm just checking my boxes. And when I got done, the guy that was the instructor for that element said, well, he said, you did well, but you didn't coach. And that was not good. I'm like, well, what the hell does that mean? He said, well, she didn't want you to do anything but just listen. Mm-hmm. Wow. So coaching isn't always about solving a problem then. Whoa, damn. So that's a new one. But see, that's the beauty of coaching. It is not so methodological that everything is driving toward you solving something. Because to be honest, you're not solving anything, the client is.
Yeah.
You know,
I want to put a pin in that real quick, because I think that is just so incredibly important, that our role as a coach isn't to be solving problems for people.
yeah.
Yeah. I think that's just really, really important. And instead, our role is to be in partnership, right?
Yes.
With our capacity to listen. How are you able to move from what is one of those moments, right, where we have a like, oh, like our mind is a bit blown by our own learning experience? How are you able to take that and really transform your coaching into that space?
Well, I'll say this to you. If your ego needs to be validated, you're not going to do well at coaching. This isn't about ego, and this isn't about, how smart you are. I mean, I could just show you my walls, right? And it's enough on them. But at the end of the day, if that person that came to see me doesn't leave here transformed, I didn't do much of a job. I didn't do well.
Yeah, all those framed
Don't mean anything. They don't mean anything. All the initials behind your name, your GPA, where you graduated from, doesn't mean anything. If that person that came in your office, number one, feels that you demeaned them, that you were condescending, means that you weren't relatable, you wasted your time and their money. Second thing, as a great coach, one of your best tools is to have enough capacity and bandwidth that you have more than one trick pony, as they would say here in Texas. But you have an assortment of vehicles that you can use. I've studied everything from DBT to cognitive behavioral therapy, interfamily systems, the trans-theoretical model for change. I've perfected motivational interviewing, appreciative inquiry, acceptance and commitment therapy. I mean, you have to really have depth and breadth and skill sets, especially at the master level of coaching, in order to bring significant transformation to clients. Because in my practice, I specialize in high net worth individuals, degreed professionals, public figures, and A-list celebrities, right? So I'm not dealing with dummies. And even if they don't have the academic accolades, money brings you into environments where you hire people that do, to the point that you can spot stupid a mile away, right? And the other part is you understand what it's like to get results, because that's all you get. It's like going to a bespoke tailor. If you go to my tailor, and that you're going to get a different suit than you buy even at Neiman Marcus, let alone J.C. Penney. You're going to get something robust that is well suited. And now your expectation in another arena is, well, if I got this dress made this way, if I got this jacket made this way, or these trousers, I need the shoes to accompany that, right? And that's how you have to look at your coaching skills. You must be in depth in everything that you offer a client. Don't go into waters that you aren't capable of treading. Yeah. Another thing is make sure that in languaging, that you don't get so clinician driven, where you want to sound intelligent and you know how to use all these phrases, but you can't make it relatable. You can't, like make the word flesh, so to speak. Your clients are looking for you to shine a light on something they probably just needed clarity on. They don't need you to validate them. Your client came to you because they were already alerted, but they weren't aware. Your client came to you because this was creeping in. Now it's critical. They don't need you to bring drama, but they do want you to, and I'm going to phrase this carefully. They don't know that they want you to help them find center stage and best lighting. But the truth is, that is your job as a choreographer, director. I like to use the term effective witness. And when you can point out to your client, hey, did you hear what you just said? Where did that come from? What part of you is speaking right now? When you can say to your client, wow, so you shared a minute ago when that happened in the past, you did what again? Okay. How could you use what you did then right now?
Mm-hmm. You know, the thing that I'm really hearing you talk about is all of this education or all of this training that you have is a way of really focusing or fleshing out your curiosity in such a way that you are partnering with this other person to really hear the nuances of what it is that they're bringing into the conversation.
Yes, totally. But one of these things that we look at is in America, especially in the West, I won't even say American Western culture, is we want things that are transactional. We want to pull up, order it, drive to the next window, get it, leave, right? And Latin cultures, people don't do business like that. They want to get to know you. They want to hear about your family. And, they'll take a nap in the middle of the day and then go back to work, right? I think we could learn a lot from that. In Asian culture, Eastern culture, there's an appreciation of everything. The wind, the mountain, the rain, the fire, the heat, the cold, right? And in acceptance and commitment therapy, I'll use that as an example. When you ask a client, I just noticed a shift in your countenance. Mm-hmm. What part of you is reacting to what you're sharing with me right now? Tell me, where do you feel it? And they'll say, well, I feel it in my shoulder and my stomach. I get a knot in my stomach. Really, that knot, well, what does it take to untie that knot? The use of metaphor is where I'm going with this. And you start realizing that life is metaphorical. That as an effective coach, knowing how to language properly is the greatest benefit to having an increased capacity or a broad stroke. Having the repertoire as a clinician, where you can take that and put it in just regular, good old country folk terminology. You may say in your mind, okay, we're doing diffusion right now, or that's cognitive dissonance. Okay, great. Most people can't spell what you just said, but they can feel the result and the impact if you have them say it to themselves in a meaningful way by you asking a question that evokes their awareness. Yeah. And that is the epitome of brilliance, is making the complicated simple.
Yeah. And that's it in a nutshell, right? How do we take these complicated and complex ideas and ask them as a simple question? I think that is huge. And to what you said earlier around getting your ego out of it, I think the other thing that's really showing up for me as you talk is how we just show up in full presence with another human being and talk to them person to person, but do it with this awareness of we're holding the space for them to have their own exploration without us needing to be like, hey, Dr. D, Yvonne, you need to do X, Y, Z, versus really using our capacity to listen to their language. I love also that you brought up metaphor, because this is like one of my favorite things ever is utilizing metaphors in coaching. And, I know you're part of the DEI program with Harvard, and I'm really curious how you see maybe metaphors as being more culturally competent, because I have a sense that they are more culturally competent, but I'm curious if you have a sense of that and what that is.
Okay, well, two things. The Institute of Coaching is an affiliate of the Harvard Medical School. So I guess pridefully so, we're a research-based organization. So at the Institute of Coaching, everything we do is evidence and research-based, and we are advocates for infusing that into best practices in coaching. But the Council on Racial Equity and Inclusion, which I'm a co-lead for, definitely has seen the correlation between using things that can't really be confined to a sentence, but can be further explored in a concept. And that's what metaphor does. A lot of this is like when you hear someone say, well, I've got the weight of the world on my shoulders. That's a metaphor. When someone says, why don't you walk in my shoes? That's a metaphor. Most people cannot displace themselves enough, especially extroverts. They wait to talk. They don't really listen. Introverts assume you should understand how they feel when they haven't given you enough indications of how they feel, right? So all of us have these blind spots that we bring to the table. Hence, again, I'm using the MBTI, which I'm master credentialed in that too. But the point I'm making is that the more that you can use examples that are relatable to people, the more that you can speak their language and not yours, more permeable you are to seeing things from the other side of the room, the better you are at helping your client to listen to themselves, and especially to pay particular attention to how something makes them feel. And I'm going to say this, it's going to sound, I'll just quote Maya Angelou. She'd say, you may or may not remember what someone said, but you will never forget how they made you feel. And as a coach, we would be well served to apply that in a 360, meaning we should reflect, again, using simple and complex and amplified reflections. If you don't know what that means, look it up. You need to know what that means. But when we reflect back to a client something in a way that is sometimes provocative enough, sometimes amplified enough, or double-sided enough, where they can now get out their shoes and look at themselves from the other side of the room. That's when you're doing transformational coaching.
Yeah. One of the things that I notice in my own work is that I really listen for the metaphors that people use, and then use those metaphors in the way that I'm curious with them. So one of the things that you had said earlier is, you have a suit and you're trying on suits and you find the one that fits the best, and you know what that feels like, where you have that embodied experience of that suit that fits so beautifully. And I think, what you're saying, or at least what I'm understanding, is by listening at that level, we amplify what's already lighting up their brain. Mm-hmm. We are moving into their spaces of understanding, and then leveraging those to help have them help themselves to make connections. Mm-hmm. And so that because they know what that feels like when they're wearing the thing that makes them feel the best, right?
Well, here's one thing I would use is the illustration when we talk about music, right? You're talking about resonance and dissonance. So if you have a C major chord, and let's pretend you have acoustic pianos, it's just 3 grand pianos side by side. If I hit the C major chord on the one in the middle, the pianos on both sides will resonate at what frequency? Well, if you don't know, I'm going to give you the answer, C major, because the piano is pre-wired with 88 strings, so it will automatically resonate with something that's likened unto itself in terms of a vibration. Well, now let's pretend that I'm doing some beautiful Mozart, some beautiful piece of work, and it's in C major, but I have a 5-year-old kid run up and just bang the piano, bang. All of a sudden, what you have now is dissonance, right? Meaning that what was harmonious has been disrupted by something that's dissonant. And in coaching, you need to do both. In coaching, you need to resonate with your client in order to evoke something, but you need to provoke something. And that's why disruption can be appropriate. So another term for resonance is also harmony, hint, right? That's why I'm using musical analogy. So when you are in harmony with your client, it can help them to let down the guard, to open up, but sometimes you need to have a little bit of disruption by challenging your client. That's why assertive listening and timing is everything, to have them have contrast in order to see things more clearly. Yeah. And that again is at an MCC level. It's okay. Like I've heard, two things coaches don't do well. One, they don't use silence well. And that's typically ACC level, and you're learning. PCC level, you should be getting better, but MCC level, silence is your friend. It is the most powerful thing in coaching. But disruption is equally akin to silence and its value, because there are times when you tell your client, hang on, stop. What are you feeling right now? You just looked up and to the right, so you're accessing your visual cortex. What did you see? You look down into your left. So now you're looking at something procedurally, logistically. What are you putting in order? Describe it, right? And so when you start understanding how to use all of these different skill sets, and there are many, I would tell anyone, you're not getting CEUs just to check a box. The reason the ICF necessitates you, or the National Board for Health and Wellness Coaching, or whatever body, the Association for Coaching in Europe, all of those entities necessitate that you get CEUs. Well, we're not doing that because we don't have nothing else to do, or we're just trying to get you to run up your credit card. It's because you need to continue to elevate your competency. And by doing that, you can utilize methodologies, techniques, and best practices that will not only evolve you as a coach, but evolve the income you're making from coaching, because people pay for quality. And when you don't have it, they run.
Going back to the metaphor of the three grand pianos, and that sense of that resonance, and the coach then, if I'm hearing you correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but that you are really using your own self as the instrument.
Well, I would say a better way to put it, that's close, but you're the pedal at the bottom of the piano that sustains the note, or you're the microphone in the piano that amplifies what's being played, or you're the spotlight that shines on the artist while they're performing, but you're not playing for them.
Right. Yeah, I love that. And I think when I was thinking about it, I was thinking what informs my curiosity is I'm listening to the harmony or dissonance that shows up inside of me to maybe inform my curiosity. But I'm also hearing this element of we as the coach are really shining the light on and amplifying the client who is really the expert in their own life. And we're amplifying that awareness that actually is inside of them that maybe they haven't heard themselves have yet.
Yeah, and why I do want to touch on something you said I don't want to let this get past us. When you're triggered, because you said, when the dissonance inside of me, which is disharmony, because, or over resonance, where now you gone down the dang rabbit hole with the client. You don't go down the rabbit hole, you shine a light and say, hey, what's down there? Where are you? But you don't go with them. An example of that would be if your mom died and your client's mom died, and now both y'all sitting there crying. I mean, I'm not saying don't be empathetic. I'm not saying not to be human, but I am saying that's not helpful.
Right.
Absolutely. It's not helpful. It may feel good, but they didn't come to coaching for both of you guys to feel good. They came for transformation. The other point is when you're triggered and you find something repulsive, something that goes against core values, because one of the most significant tools to bring transformation is identifying your client's core values. Well, let's say something in their core values makes you want to puke, offends you. That's when you have to do a check-in. And maybe not right then, maybe right then if it's bad enough to where you can't contain it and it's all over your face or, in your body language. But that's when you have to consider, okay, I think I've gone as far as I can go. And you tell the client, I just want to say it's been great, but we've reached a point where I think the way that I can contribute, it has reached its limit. Are you receptive to me referring you to someone who I think that can pick up from where we're leaving off?
Yeah.
Or, sometimes you have to divorce a client. One of the first things that I will tell anybody, I don't take everybody. So when people reach out to me, like they'll read something I wrote in Forbes, I'm on the Forbes Coaching Council, and I'm frequently featured in Forbes magazine online. So they'll reach out, Doc, I want to work with you. And I'll say, well, pump your brakes. Let's just have an informal discussion. We'll meet, contact my admin. We'll meet for about 20 minutes. And I do that with interviews. I do that with clients. I do that before I take lectures or speaking invitations, because if I don't feel at a core level that resonates with my core values, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
All money's not good money. All opportunities aren't profitable, especially if they blow up in your damn face later. So what I'm suggesting to you, especially you, those of you that are starting to get a little bit of traction, your name's getting out there, you may have a blog, your TED Talk just finally hit, 100,000, 50,000, 1 million views or whatever. There's a responsibility that you owe the profession of coaching. And yes, I'm going to tell you, you do owe that, because for everything that people like, you're looking at me, so I represent a bunch of spaces: African-American male, biracial male. I'm not going to tell you my age, but I'm not a spring chicken, so I represent that baby boomer generation too, at least the end of it. I have to stop and think every time I open my mouth. Every time somebody sees me on one of these national TV programs or in Huffington Post or in Ebony or Essence or Black Enterprise or Forbes, what I said and what I did is going to influence someone's opinion of coaching. And I ask that you, while now you're finally getting some traction, that you perfect your messaging, that you develop a relationship between your messaging, your core values, and your coach approach, so that these things have an alignment that's well fitted with the code of ethics and the best practices that ICF and the Association for Coaching, the American Medical Association, or any of those entities have set forth. Because at the end of the day, you can't unstrike that match. We need you to accurately reflect that this is a profession. And for those of you that are watching this who have self-ordained yourself a coach, I'm not going to try to put your fire out, but I'm going to doggone sure tell you to turn the flame down a bit and get some credentials, because this is a science. It is evidence and research based. And if you appear any other way than well-credentialed and authentic, you're probably going to get yourself in a situation you can't get yourself out of.
Yeah, and it really speaks to doing your own work. I think it kind of harkens back to where we even began, where we have to do the work before we show up with other people, because they may only be one step behind us. So it's helpful if we're maybe a few more steps ahead, and that we're continuing on that journey. I really appreciate that perspective. Dr. D, I am so glad that you've been on the show. What are you up to? What's coming up for you next?
Oh, wow. This, I guess, and I'm going to speak about, it's so funny. I'm talking about something in the future that will be in the past when this airs. But the 2021 Converge ICF's global conference, I'm a featured speaker for that. So I would just say definitely look at that. I will lecture on accurate empathy at that conference. There's a host of stuff I'm going to do in television, but you could just Google that and you'll see, check local networks or whatever in Google, but there's always something on somebody's network. And I know that there's a bunch of features that are going to consistently and be in Forbes, whether it's something just featuring my content individually or me as part of an ensemble collective, where they put out topics and they ask 7, 8, 10 experts in the field globally, and typically I'm one of those people.
Nice. So I'll definitely be having links to your website, to your TED Talk, and even to, I think I'm going to go find you on Forbes and add a couple links to some Forbes articles as well as your books. Thank you so much for being on the Coaching Studio today and sharing your broad breadth and depth of your awareness and understanding of coaching. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me, and it's been fun.